Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Desi, and this is another book review for a novel that I have just started, or I should say a series that I've just started, the Dresden Files. I have gone through this twice now, and this is Stormfront Volume 1 of The Gathering Storm, and I had some thoughts on it, so here goes. What motivated me to start this was actually an idea I had for a fantasy novel myself. I'm currently writing a book right now. It's not fantasy themed, but I always wanted to do like a modern fantasy. Like, how would the modern world deal with a magic system and with magic users, and how would they react? Because we live in such a secular and mostly rational world where if you were to bring magic into it, who knows what sort of chaos and social disorder it would bring. So that was kind of my idea. And this actually looked interesting, and I'd heard people reference it, so I gave it a try. Now, this book does start really slow, and it has a very much a detective feel to it, like a gumshoe sort of thing. When I first read it, I was like, when am I going to see the magic? This guy's just going around solving murder mysteries. Somebody that I watched said it was like a CSI episode or SVU, and I kind of agree with that because Harry is just wandering around looking for clues. He actually meets with a mob boss, and as someone who is a fan of The Sopranos, I think that Marconi, the mob boss, is written really well. So props there. He was one of the people who kept me interested because I was like, this is going really slow and this is not going anywhere. I didn't sign up to read a detective novel. I want dragons and firebolts and magic, and this is anything but that. This is kind of bland, and Chicago's never really been the most interesting city to me. So I was a bit skeptical, but characters like Marconi and Murphy were pretty interesting, so it kept me interested. Right off the bat, some things that were kind of making me roll my eyes were that Dresden appears to have very chauvinistic tendencies. Like, he assumes that the murderer in the particular case... Oh, by the way, spoilers out. If you haven't watched or if you haven't seen the series, you might want to stop here because that got spoilers in it. He essentially finds a murder scene and assumes that it's a female sorceress who did it, since it appears to be supernatural. He is a consultant for the Chicago PD, and Murphy is the person who gets basically she's assigned to these cases that involve a lot of mystery that can't be explained by normal means. So she has Harry Dresden, the resident wizard of Chicago, as a advisor slash police. I forget what his official title is. I'll think of it later maybe. But he basically advises and gives her clues and leads to what might have caused a supernatural event, which I think is pretty interesting. And a lot of the early book focuses on Dresden's romantic interests along with these mysteries that he's trying to solve. And there's two mysteries. One is with Monica Sells, who is like a middle-aged housewife that, of course, because this book is written from a virile male's perspective, he is interested in. And it's also from the murder perspective. And they ended up being intertwined later, which is a little bit predictable, but it kind of makes sense. And yeah, the early part just kind of meanders through, and it doesn't really pick up until he has his battle with the demon, which is about two-thirds of the way through the book. I guess it's about midway through the book, and it's a pretty intense encounter, and this is really when I started getting invested in it. And this is the set encounter with the demon. He ends up getting a hold of a girl who he's trying to bed, of course, because he's a crotchety but also very virile and I'm trying to use a YouTube safe word to describe very interested in the opposite sex. And he battles a demon that was summoned by another dark mage or dark necromancer, and it culminates in this battle outside, and Harry actually starts using magic, and he actually has another battle a little earlier with a vampire who assumes that he killed one of her associates or one of her girls because she runs like a again, trying to use YouTube safe words, escort agency. There we go. Escort is a safe word. That's when we really start to see him use magic, and it's pretty good. I like this scene in particular. This is really what got me hooked, is when he fights the demon, because he uses the power of a storm. And I like that it describes the elements, because storms, especially if you go to the Midwest and you see some of the thunderstorms that go through there, they're powerful. And with thunder and lightning and all that, and it describes the raw power that he taps into, and also like the energy drain after he uses this magic. This is not a free casting thing. He isn't using cantrips. He's using the power of a storm, which takes immense concentration and effort on his part. And he's kind of like rescuing the damsel in distress, and he makes a love potion and a bunch of other crap that leads to this, which is really rewarding. Unfortunately, he gets into some trouble with the police department because they suspect him of committing the murder, because he is in fact a self-proclaimed wizard and the only one known in town, and the murders that take place are magical in nature, so everyone suspects him, including what's called the White Council, and I believe what's called his warden, who's like a person who keeps an eye on him because he has a dark past. And I know I'm kind of all over the place with the plot, but it's all coming back to me that now that we're in the interesting part of the book, because it's all coming together at this point. When you're first reading the first part of the book, you're like, oh, this is just a detective novel. But now it becomes very much a fantasy novel, with the detective stuff kind of going more and more into the background. And this all culminates in a final battle with the Dark Wizard, and he is essentially turned to the dark side. He is obsessed with power and prestige. We actually see Harry get the temptation of power and prestige, and he is the one who in fact summoned this demon lizard you see in the background. And it's a really good final scene. I would say this is high tier, if I were to put it in the tier rating, of a boss battle or a final battle. Harry is exhausted. He has to rely on wit. He has to rely on moxie and practical spells versus a very powerful but inexperienced dark wizard. And it is an epic battle. It's pretty gruesome, actually, at the end. And, I mean, there are bits of horror and goriness, but also it's only in certain parts where it's really graphic. And most of it's just like him roaming around town, getting beat up by mobsters and getting his hair stolen and whatever else, and then him taking vengeance, and you get to really see Harry use his magical power, and it's awesome. Yeah, the latter part of the book I really enjoyed, and the final battle was amazing, and also him getting in trouble with the law, and him having to worry about his own safety. He isn't immortal, he is flawed. He can get snuck up on, like he's not completely safe from mortal weapons like guns, or like even just getting beat up by a thug with a baseball bat. Like, he's flawed. And also his character is flawed. He is kind of you don't really know, he's on the side of good, but there are holes in his character. So yeah, overall, I would say that it was an interesting read, but I do have to get into the problematic stuff. So for those of you who don't want to hear about sexism, you might want to skip this last part and wait till the end, because I know there are some of my viewers who don't want to hear anything about that. So feel free to skip ahead, but I do need to mention this. So unfortunately, the way Harry describes women and the way we see women in the book through Harry's eyes is very much based on their appeal. Like I said, I'm trying to use YouTube safe words. And very much on appearances, how attractive they are, how appealing they are, what they're wearing, stuff like the amount of cleavage showing. And this scene in particular, when he goes to meet the vampiress, the girl in the outfit on top of him turns out to be a vampire, and she's described as wearing this dress that goes like all the way up her leg, wearing this really low cut top, this super tight dress, of being really attractive. And in this particular scene, he manages, because he suspects she's going to attack him, which she does, and he ends up using a spell, or actually a bit of concealed light, to get the vampire away, because they're vulnerable to sunlight, and she pops out into her actual vampiress form, which is like super hideous and ugly. And that's one of the things that bothered me too. Bianca, the vampiress, when she's exposed, that's the biggest problem she has, is that she no longer has this beautiful veneer. she's been exposed by Harry and he sees her for what she truly is. And above all else, not the fact that she just fought or is in the process of fighting this powerful wizard who might destroy her. She's more worried about, oh, he saw through my veil and he realizes that I'm this hideous vampire. So that kind of bothered me. The way he describes his interest with Susan Rodriguez and even Murphy, it's all very chauvinistic. As I said earlier, he just assumes that at the beginning of the novel that the murder victim was killed by a female because girls are more vengeful than men. It's multiple times, and it bothered me. It didn't make me put the book down, but Harry is very much a sexist, and I hope that that actually leads to something, because right now it just seems like a lot of borderline objectification. And I hate to use those buzzwords, and I know those of you who are watching this part, which I advise you to skip, by the way, might give me grief for it, but it's there, and I'm calling it out. So there. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So, as a final tier rating, the last book that I read was Twilight, and I put that at C tier. I put that down there with the Iron Druid Chronicles. Both of these I didn't dislike reading, but I really wasn't that captivated by them, so I'm putting them in that tier. And I actually started New Moon, which I'm having a lot of issues with Bella's love arc with Jacob, and I'm really debating whether I want to continue because it's really problematic. But anyways, we're not talking about that. I'm going to put Dresden Files a B tier. I'm excited to read the next part of the series. I hope that it gets better from here because I enjoyed it overall, but I did have some serious issues with it, with pacing and with the setting, to be honest. But overall, pretty good. I'd put it below, Witcher and Stephen King, and then, of course, Wheel of Time and Song of Ice and Fire. I put it S tier. But anyways, thank you for watching my review. If you want to see more of these, like and subscribe. Any suggestions would be appreciated, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.